Hey guys, welcome into the Box Out Podcast. It's Jayden Taylor, your host. Thank you for tuning in. I debated doing this open, but I went back and forth about it just because I know that we just discussed it a couple episodes ago, the whole James Harden fiasco, but it's going to keep living in our feeds, and I am about sick of it. I can't take it anymore. It's making me angry, mostly because I know that we're going to keep getting updates, and especially with the regular season night underway, we don't have other things to distract us, and so I've been trying to avoid coming back to this topic again, but we'll talk about that situation first, and then we will talk about the betting odds for most improved player of the year this upcoming NBA season and who my bet will be for it. All coming up here on the Box Out. Cue the music. The drama unfolds again today here, recording this episode on Wednesday. There is a report from ESPN that James Harden wasn't at practice and that he remains frustrated at the progress towards a trade to the Clippers. Sources close to him tell ESPN Harden was expected at practice today, sources said. In other words, the, quote, no-show was not communicated in advance. The Sixers plan to give Harden the chance to explain this, quote, unexcused absence before deciding how to handle any punishment, sources said. Now, I'm not an expert. I think it's because he wants to get traded. I know that because he's been calling the GM a liar and also not showing up and also said he wanted to be out of Philadelphia. But of course, the problem comes and lies in that the GM is Daryl Morey and that he's going to play hardball, as we've seen played out with Ben Simmons and has so far we're seeing played out with James Harden. See, Morey wants value back, and that's completely understandable, but the issue is that Harden has been such a head case, has been on too many different teams in recent years, and also is wanting a big contract and wanting to also be a superstar wherever he is. And right now, it's about one team who is currently in trade talks with them, and they are far apart, apparently, the Clippers and the Sixers. The last reports floating around between trade talks were that it was going to be probably Marcus Morris and Robert Covington, but Morey's going to also want more value than that, though. He's wanting Terrence Mann and multiple first-round picks, but the Clippers aren't wanting to budge on Mann, and they're also not necessarily budging on the picks either. Now, apparently there's been reports that the Clippers are shopping their 2028 first-round pick around the league to see if they can get multiple picks back, but right now, Harden looks like he's stuck there in Philadelphia. He's now missing practice without communicating to the team that he's going to be missing as well now. It's all just one recipe for disaster because at this rate, it's really hard to see him showing up and playing regular season games after missing basically all of training camp and not being a part of their practices day to day. Now, I know James Harden's good, but at the same time, what's the point? And Harden probably feels the same way, but the league rules indicate that he should be playing this season or else he's going to end up not in free agency next summer. According to the CBA, he actually specifically has 30 days that he can hold out before the team will then have the ability to block him from free agency next summer. Now, it would be crazy if it came to that because we would really see the power of teams be flexed over players. But at the end of the day, it's James Harden's fault. He had the option to opt out and to not be traded and to pick where he wanted to play basketball. But what he knew, and what I think we know as well, is that the market wasn't there for James Harden this past summer. And that's why he opted in, and he wanted to get traded so he could try to be on a good team, but also still make some good money at $35 million and then hope to get the extension next summer. Well, that's not working out, at least so far. But one of these sides are going to have to cave somewhere, and that means I think Harden will end up outside of Philadelphia. Right now, I think it will be the Clippers, only because they are the only team with a heartbeat, with a pulse, trying to trade for James Harden, and that should show you something. And this is coming from someone who watched James Harden, liked James Harden's game, at one point loved James Harden's game, especially during his prime years, and the team that he had with Chris Paul, where they were so close to the NBA Finals, it almost felt like it was the NBA Finals just because of how much of a blowout it was against Cleveland for Golden State. And some have the belief that if Chris Paul didn't get hurt, that the Rockets could have won or would have won. And I'm of the mindset that that is a real possibility, but at the end of the day, obviously, we can't change that. Harden's game now, though, in 2023, it's just declined. He's 34 years old as of August 26th, and clearly his speed and lateral quickness aren't as good as they once were. He struggles getting and finishing at the rim. Unlike his prime self, his three-point percentage, it seems to be back up after last season, 38.5% from three. After when he originally joined the Sixers and on the Nets last season, he shot it at about 33%. So luckily, that part of his game is okay. He dished out 10.7 assists last year, and we all know that Harden can dish it out, but throughout the years has needed to pound the air out of the rock to do so. He kind of created this heliocentric basketball that Luka is playing now, but Harden was the originator. But to summarize, his skills have just diminished over the years. He's not as prolific as a scorer, and he is probably best as the third best player on a team, especially as we've seen from playoff performances. He did have a couple of good playoff games last year, but he also had a couple of bad ones, so don't really know what to make of it. If he was on the Clippers, I do think that they could have success, but I don't even want to get into the Clippers right now because they are a mess waiting to happen between Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, having barely played basketball together throughout regular seasons and playoffs. So we'll get to that discussion if Harden does end up getting to the Clippers. But so far, we are in an old Western standoff, and it's going to be fast-moving, I presume, as we are approaching the beginning of the NBA season next week. I don't know if anything substantial gets done, but I know the Sixers, and obviously Harden doesn't want this to linger into the season, so something's got to give, and something's got to happen. Coming up next, we'll discuss the odds for most improved player this upcoming NBA season and who my bet for it will be. Next on the Box Out Podcast. Let's look at the odds for the NBA's Most Improved Player Award for the 23-24 season. Of course, we haven't even started it, but this is a preseason pick. Get our bets in before the first regular season game. Now, we'll start with the best odds, which will be Mikal Bridges at plus 800. The odds are from DraftKings, by the way. Now, he has a strong case because, well, simply when he got traded to Brooklyn, he got to be the number one option for them and got to basically put the ball in the basket a lot more than he got to in Phoenix. He averaged over 26 points per game following his midseason trade, and then followed that up with a strong showing at the World Cup, playing for Team USA. Now, the Nets aren't exactly going to win a championship or making any deep playoff runs, but with Mikal Bridges' improvement, you would think from the offseason and getting some time to work on his game, knowing that coming into this season, he's probably going to be the best player on his team and going to be responsible for putting some points up. So there should be some improvement there. Even if the improvement is very mild, it still should do enough, you would think, if he's going to be averaging something like 26 points a game, that alone on a team that could be at least 500. Now, Mikal Bridges is a little older to be receiving the award, but Julius Randle won it in his sixth year, so it's not an out-of-this-world thing for him to do it. So I'm not concerned about that necessarily. But the voters may just be looking for someone who's younger and someone who will have a bigger improvement from the end of last season through this season, just because we saw it for half a season, and I just wonder if that will affect the voting at all. Plus 800, though, on Mikal Bridges is not a bad deal to take here before the season, knowing what we know about his improvement in Brooklyn. not often do we get to see a sneak peek of what a most improved case could be. One of the biggest differences is that the fact that he could be named as an East All-Star this season, especially if he's averaging anything like he was at the end of last season. And that could play a big role in him getting votes if none of the other people can get that nod who are in the race as well. Now, the next closest odds to Mikal Bridges is plus 1,000 with Tyrese Maxey. Now, he's someone who obviously has a good case because of the simple fact that if Harden leaves, he theoretically should be unlocked in the sense that he will have all the on-ball opportunities at guard as well as learning how to play off-ball like he did last season with Harden, and that could culminate in a really good season for Maxey, who has shown a lot of potential. What's odd about Maxey, though, is he's yet to become a top 5 vote getter for the Most Improved Award, though through his 3 seasons in the NBA, his scoring average has risen from 8 points to 20.3, despite the addition of James Harden. Now, the first thing you want to do, obviously, is look back at last season at the games Harden didn't play. And what did Maxey do in those? Well, he averaged 24.8 points, 5.4 assists, and 3.8 rebounds on some good shooting splits through 13 games. He's given all of the reasons and signs to place a bet on him. But at the end of the day, it's also about what will the roster look like post-Harden trade? What will Embiid be like? What will the Sixers be like as a whole? Now, he might be able to produce through anything and everything this season just for the simple fact that he will most likely have the ball in his hands a lot more post a potential Harden trade. So he's not a bad bet either. So now looking at the third best odds to win Most Improved Player, according to DraftKings, will be Jordan Poole at plus 1,200. Now, Poole was going to be the number one option for the Wizards basically this season. Not a lot of talent there in Washington, but Jordan has shown, obviously, in his years in Golden State that he can put the ball in the basket at times, especially well. Now, last year, averaging just 20.4 points per game, but he did take it on 15, nearly 16 shots, so shooting just 43% from the field and 34% from three if we're rounding up here, 87% from the free throw line, and 4.5 assists to go with that. I think for Jordan that the opportunity is obviously there, but it will be pretty much all about how efficient he can be in the uptick in shots and minutes he's probably going to play for Washington, and how many more points can he score on that efficiency. And so it will be a battle for sure, and Poole's going to have to figure it out. I personally am not feeling confident on a bet for Jordan Poole. I would rather just stay away from the Wizards as a whole if I'm betting on anything, to be honest. They're just not going to be a great basketball team this year. And to me, Jordan Poole hasn't flashed as someone that's going to be an elite scorer no matter what the situation is. And he's never been that super efficient in his seasons so far. And so I don't know if I see the jump big enough for Poole to go from 20 points a game to 25, 26, 27 and up on good efficiency. And not only that, will it matter? Because if the Wizards' record is so bad, there's also going to be that plays into it as well. Most Improved is not historically a winner's award, but at the same time, if voters feel like they're just voting for someone who's chucking up a bunch of shots on a bad team, that won't feel good to them either. I think that the award is going to end up being a toss-up between Maxey and Bridges, and my gut, honest to goodness, tells me to go with Bridges. Even though I like Maxey, I like his game a lot, Philadelphia's situation is just making me want to stay away, even though they have the potential, obviously, to be a far better basketball team this year than Brooklyn. But with Maxey entering his 4th NBA season, I think it's less about the age difference between the two and more so about the literal results. And I think Bridges has the number one option, is just going to have that ability to produce at an efficient clip and a higher clip than Maxey might be able to with the reigning MVP, by the way, Joel Embiid. So that'll do it for us here on the Box Out Podcast. Thank you for listening in to this episode. And we will be back again on Tuesday, right before the start of the NBA season. Thank goodness for that. Thank you again for listening. Like and follow on Instagram at the Box Out Podcast, and give us a review and rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That helps us a lot. Thank you again, and cue the music.
Rock the beat.